What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, Blues Peepers? You are now bluesing with Jack Dappa Blues podcast, Jack Dappa Blues Radio, Jack Dappa Blues Heritage Radio. Call it what you want, but when you come here, you're going to learn what I like to call African American tribal music and the black experience. We have my brother Brooklyn Blues over here.
What's up? What's up?
And our featured and special guest that I'm honored to finally be able to sit here with and discuss her journey and the culture, traditions, and heritage of African American tribal music, Mrs. Beareather Reddy.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's been a long time coming, yes?
Okay. Yes, if you said that, yeah. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure being here, actually, with you.
Well, I'm happy because you have such a long resume of great work from singing to news media, news industry. You also had you also have a blues woman festival. That you're bringing all to. Now, first of all, your hometown. Where's your hometown?
Sylvania, Georgia. Not Savannah. Everyone said, oh, Savannah? No, Sylvania, Georgia. It's about 63 miles south of Savannah.
Wow, so let's talk about that. Because now are we talking about the Piedmont region?
I'm not really, I don't think it's the Piedmont region. I don't really know a lot about blues in that area. All I know was when I was a little girl, I listened to B.B. King and who was Chubby Checker and folks like that. So I don't, it could be the Piedmont area, but.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but was there a church life? Were you in the choir?
Well, I remember first hearing music when, I don't want to tell my age, maybe that was that other person, but, when I was a little girl and my aunties and cousin and stuff would pick cotton in a cotton field, and then they would sing, like spirituals and some kind of harmony and everything. And so I first heard the music there, and then more so in the church on Sundays, when they would do that, harmonize and carrying on.
So your folks was into agriculture, which is one of our main functions, at least at one time.
Yes, at the time they picked cotton and probably did some other kind of field work, but primarily in my hometown it was cotton.
What is your memory? Excuse me. What are your memories of that time outside of just hearing the field hollers and call and response type songs, if you remember?
Well, primarily when I lived there, I would say my parents and myself, everything was white and colored. The fountains were colored and white, and the theater was primarily white on the bottom, and black folks who could come in, perhaps, and sit in the balcony. And my strongest memories when my mom had a toothache, and she had to go to the colored dentist in the back. So primarily was that, but it was a lot of what I liked about it, and I think when I first got introduced to the blues, is the gentleman that raised me, I called him Daddy, with everybody else in the house, but actually he was my cousin, and he would work hard in the field. Actually, he worked in the sawmill, but everybody else worked in the field, and he would work hard all week long. But when Friday came, it was time to ball.
That's right.
So they all went down to the bottom, and they danced hard, and they bought 25-cent shots of liquor and 50-cent shots of liquor, and they went to the bottom and they just danced and slow drag and the I forget the thing, the strut when you go back and all this kind of thing. I forget the name. But as they worked hard, they played hard too, and that's when I first heard that music, and they all were extremely happy, you know. And those are my fondest memories.
Wow. I mean, you know, I'm doing a series called The Blues Narrative, which is, I don't want to say based off of, but birthed from the slave narrative that lives at the Library of Congress right now. And a few entries that I've read, which is it's based on the first-hand accounts of former slaves, right? And the few accounts that I've read share similar stories, right? So it's almost as if this is the foundation of not only just American music, but our tradition and culture in terms of lace your boots up, nose to the grind, hard work, but make sure you have that other time.
Right, exactly.
Right? And would it be safe to say a lot of the music that came out of those experiences were not just social songs in regards to making a point or a stand, but entertaining, funny, fun, kind of lighten.
Uplifting songs as well.
Okay, I hear that. So now, when did you start singing?
Well, I want to believe that I start singing in those cotton fields that day. You know, when the elders were out picking cotton, I would be under the tree with the other kids until the dew dried. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that.
My grandma used to say that.
Right. You stay there till the dew dried, and I would hear them, and I would try to sing as well in my little girl voice. So I believe I started singing at that age, maybe 5 or 6, and then I'd go home and sing in the fan, like other kid did at that time. And
I think every kid did that except for the kids now.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
my kids do that.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, because that sound, something about that sound.
Right, you hear it. So, as a little girl, when I was 12, I left my hometown of Georgia and I moved to Boston. And so I sang in the choir there and all that kinds of stuff. So I would say I started singing at like that early age at 5 or something.
Well, that's interesting. What inspired the move to Boston of all places?
Well, like I said, the person who raised me, I called my daddy, but he was really my cousin, and he had children. And my cousin who transported me from Georgia to Boston, she left town and got married at 15, and she always wanted the best for me. So I guess she figured Boston or away from my hometown would be more advantageous for me. I would learn more and be experienced to
Boston
other things.
Being more of a progressive or educational setting.
Right, than my beautiful hometown of Sylvania, Georgia.
Right, the Orange State. So now, when you, if you don't mind me asking.
I know you're not going to ask me how old I'm at.
No,
because we're going to break up right now. No.
I wasn't going to ask you how old you are, but just the age range of this trip to Boston, I was going to ask you in terms of age or high school, college. What was that like? What were you there when you got there? What was your train of thought? You know, were you in school?
When I moved up that summer,
moved
up that summer and I was 12, and I think the largest building in our hometown was maybe a story and a half. So when I rode up on probably the Trailway bus, and I woke up and I saw these big buildings. I thought I was in Twilight Zone or something, or Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
But I was also shocked when I went to school. I saw this brother darker than this microphone. I'm like, you're a little bit darker though. And
I love it.
And he spoke to this foreign language, so I was like, and it was Spanish.
Wow.
So, but I had never heard that in my hometown. So it was a cultural change, but quickly, was able to assimilate it.
Right. Or adjust. So in that process, well, let me ask you this, because I know you do a lot when it comes to culture and music. Are are you classically trained? Did you train as a vocalist and in music?
Uh, in high school, I had majored in, I took Glee Club and all that stuff, and I went to the University of Massachusetts in
Mm.
Amherst, and I majored in performing arts, music, theater, and dance.
Wow. Well, that's good because there's a play. Oh man, talk to us about. I believe it's a one-woman production you did. Or am I in the ballpark here?
That I do. Yeah, I do a couple of them, but one in particular is called Beareather Sing the Classic Blues Women
Yes.
from 1920s and the 1930s. And so I do characters of about seven different women from that area, including
Mm.
Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, Victoria Spivey,
Mm.
Sippy Wallace,
Mm.
to name a few. So,
Yeah, you're naming heavy hitters here.
well, I love that particular era because that was the first time that African American blues music was really recorded, and particularly by
Popularized, right?
right by Mamie Smith did the
Right.
first recording of that thing called Love in like 1920.
Right. Right. So now, with that being said, because I mean, we could touch several topics just off that alone, right? Because we're speaking about a group of very strong and animated women,
Right.
independent. Well, I say
Right.
You have to be animated to be. My brother and I have a saying: "You're only an entertainer if you're entertaining." So you have to have a strong personality, right? But one of the biggest, how can I put this? One of the biggest things that I take away from what they call that classic blues era of these initial women is that they were strong business women that
Exactly.
actually put black music on the map as a business, as an industry. Would that be in a ballpark or?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that they were definitely strong women. They had their own troops. They had, I think it was Ma Rainey who even had a train
Right.
thing,
Oh,
and they had their own buses, and they were just strong black women who had their own opinion about stuff, and you know, and they were into free love and
right.
just free. But yes, definitely, they even though they didn't make a lot of money, but they started that recording business.
Right. Well,
You know.
I think Ma Rainey was pretty well off. No.
You mean before this era start, the so-called classic blues one?
Right.
Well, she had a juke joint as well. I don't
Right.
know if she was, I guess, well enough to off in that era, I would say.
Well, let's talk about vaudevilles.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about vaudeville, but
Well,
go ahead.
just a tad bit because
I know she was doing vaudeville before
right.
she got into that.
Right.
Hmm.
And though it turned into minstrel,
Right.
right? But initially, this was how black entertainers, from musicians to comedians to thespians, were able to work. Correct.
Correct. Hmm.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is that? I cannot think of the organization.
Black
what's
theater.
Yes.
in Harlem.
Owners, yeah.
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
Booking Owners Association. I forget what it is at the moment. Yeah, that's how they were able to work.
Right. So, in your one-woman play that highlights these women that come from that, do you
Theater
address
Booking
it?
Nation.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just still trying to think of the name. Go ahead,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
do you address that in any way, or give a maybe not necessarily a lecture, but do you somehow present that concept of vaudeville in your shows?
Well, in my particular show, I dressed up in the costumes, but I do give a little background on each vocalist that I highlight, and try to give a little bit of their history, how they began and stuff like that.
Okay. So now, how long is the show? Where
It's about an hour, 10 minutes.
that's a
And
good show.
and it includes, a little history about themselves, and then I sing either one or two songs by each artist, and change headdress to
Of course.
represent them.
Now, so when you do this, do you go into character of each person?
When I sing the songs, I do the character. I just speak of something about their, where they were born, their style of music, the temper of their voice, that sort of thing, and then I sing the song as close as I can in the kind of aura that they have.
Right. You bring them to life.
Yeah.
So now let's move over for a minute and discuss your festival. Please share. Talk to us about it. Let the people know.
Well, I started the first one in 2007.
Okay.
And I wanted to do that for the same reason I spoke to you about being down south, and my folks or the people that I knew that worked hard all week long, and then at the end they came, to the juke joints and just threw their hair back and did the twist or whatever else they
The
did.
dance was at the time.
And they felt really good about it, and I know they were really happy. And so living up here in Brooklyn, I wanted to create that same kind of feeling for people, just you worked hard all week, let's get into culture. And blues wasn't, in my opinion, prominent, particularly here in Brooklyn. I know
Absolutely.
there's Manhattan, but there were some groups that would do folk and blues occasionally. So I wanted to be that person that brought that kind of euphoric feeling to others and introduce it to people who had never heard of it, and
Absolutely.
particularly youth.
Absolutely, because that's a good way to bridge the gap and have people understand that it's not slave music in the fact that it's negative, right? This is our
Exactly.
tradition and our history.
Exactly. But in doing that, I found I would walk down the street and give flyers out to people, and particularly my people of color. And a lot of times they were saying things like, no, Blue, I don't live that way no more,
No more.
I'm saved. I mean, I'm like, what do you mean? You're not like living, because that's all blues is. It's just about life.
Absolutely.
So, but they felt that they couldn't listen, that it was the devil music, which is ridiculous.
Well,
know.
it is. It is in several. I spoke to Jock Webb Sr. last week. You guys can check that interview out on the archive. And he explained that the blues is spiritual, and both blues and gospel come from the church. You cannot have one without the other. Now, you and I both know that there are many reasons why they're separate, or
Exactly.
people say separate, but
Right.
they're really of the same cloth. Now, I just want to talk to you about that, though. When you walk down the street and you handed somebody a flyer, and their response to you was, "I don't live that way no more." So now, are they referring to not just the music, but the culture of excessive drinking and promiscuity?
I believe so. Yeah, that at this point now they were saved, and that perhaps that's something they did in their that they right before they were saved. And the other thing is that a lot of them were saying that's sad music and slavery time music.
Right, right. I've heard that a lot. I don't listen to no slave music. I'm like, see?
Exactly.
Well, so, with that being said, please explain to us the importance of edifying the folk that make these statements.
Well, I think that I know that this music is music that came out the souls of black people, their sufferings, their struggle, and their joys.
Absolutely.
So I don't think I know there's nothing that they should be ashamed of, because this is an art form that was developed by us primarily. And, to uh, stop being ashamed of who you are and what you contribute to this country, because you did a lot, and to, just act like it doesn't exist. I mean, this is of you, and you should be proud of it.
Absolutely.
Primarily.
So, with that being said, and now I'm asking for your opinion on this one, right? Why do you think to this day, a lot of our people are ashamed of that part of our history and kind of try to not think about or participate in blues cultural activities and events?
Well, I think here in New York, up north, maybe they think it's, I don't know what anybody thinks, but perhaps it's like I said, slavery. They don't want to think about that. They want to believe that that everything is okay. That they, not that they equal, because they are, but they just want to forget the past.
Right.
And
right.
Primarily that's it. Like, want to be treated equal, even though they're not.
No, we're not.
So
we're not. No, we are not.
Definitely. And I forgot the other thing that I was going to say, but I don't know why they want to really forget it.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this. Along with your festival and other works that you do, like the performance and things of this nature, what else are you doing or looking to do or think should be done to try to reconnect African American people back to our tribal music? Because it's pretty much what it is, from soul songs all the way to even early hip hop.
Right. I just want to continue to do the festivals. Prior the first 10, I've done 10. And for the past 2 years, I didn't do any, because all the festivals, I was the only funder, funding resources for myself, and I ran out of money, so I didn't do it for 2 years. But I want to start it again, starting in October 2018. I also want to, as I've done before, continue to give classes to youth, and they've all been free. So I want to continue that, because I go in the school on an after-school program, and I introduce these children to blues music. At first, they're resistant, because they don't want to hear anything about that.
Right.
So, but I continue to do that, and I also, for the last 3 years, have been doing a folk festival.
Okay.
In the Ocean Hill, Brownsville. So that's what I feel. I want to continue to do the festivals so people would know more about them, and because there's a lot of people. Even in Brooklyn, where I lived, in Ocean Hill or Bed-Stuy, that don't like or haven't been introduced to the blues, believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe it. Brownsville. That's interesting. I grew up on Nostrand Avenue. I hung out in Brownsville for a while. This was like in the late 80s and all the 90s. It was a different time. But what I would say is, in regards to the blues in the school, prior to going to just the neighborhoods of black folk, right? Because Bed-Stuy, to me at least, is a parallel to Harlem, the entire history. The schools, are they schools that are predominantly African American and Caribbean American, or are they schools that are non-black folk?
Well, the schools are primarily African American.
Okay.
And a little bit of Hispanic, but more so African American. And the school that I've taught in recently was like in the middle of 3 projects. I mean, right in the middle. And these kids, in my opinion, really needed
The blues.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
they have
agree.
it.
Yes, yes, they do.
You know.
They
So,
do. The reason why I ask because there's a lot of blues in the school programs, and the unfortunate part about it is they're usually targeted to non-black schools, and probably because this is an opinion. I don't know, but probably because there's not a lot of money in schools that have black folk, right?
Right.
But I want to ask you this though. Do you think one of the main reasons that it's a little, I wouldn't say difficult, but it's trying to introduce young black children and teenagers to the blues is because they took music curriculum out of the schools, so kids aren't learning instruments.
Definitely. I think that's primarily the reason. And even this school that I've taught the last few years, I guess I don't want to name a school.
Right, of course.
But I just heard recently that they took the music out. This fellow that I worked with, his part out. But I work with. I'm a member. I'm on the board of the Central Brooklyn Jazz Consortium, and
Michael Hill just walked in,
Hey, how are you, sir?
and
Michael
New York
Hill.
Blues Hall of Famer, 2 times over. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
and they get funding for this after school program, and I teach the blues there, and so we're going to get funding again this year. So that's one reason. Even though they took the actual class of music out, the choir directing and everything,
Wow.
I'll still be there doing blues, and other jazz musicians will be there.
That's groovy. I want to talk to you about that off air. Now, I would like to ask, for the sake of the audience, when you're teaching these blues courses to these young African American children, teens, preteens, are you explaining or sharing with them that this is actually African American history and heritage documented, or, are they getting the gist of it, and what's their response after they?
They're a little resistant at first. To tell you the truth, these kids almost make me cry. Every day I want to, not show up the next week. But I know I have an obligation to them to, to let them know about their culture in this respect. And, to keep on making them strong and being proud of themselves. So I definitely emphasize the fact that this is African American music and this is your culture that you should be proud of.
Right. And did you see a parallel to the blues of these young folk to the blues of young folk of your generation and prior? In regards to possibly poverty or lack of resources, because you said it's
Definitely.
obviously emotional to go there.
Oh, yeah, very much so, because, I'm telling them about one thing and they're talking about their hair or their nails and fighting, or, there was the 2 little girls in my class. They were probably about 2 feet tall. And there was a couple that was a little bit taller. But these 2, they were at it every day. And fighting.
Not verbally, they was
Physical, just for no good reason. And so it was hard for me. And then I tried to, now I'm talking about me so much, but I tried to show these children the blues and love and being together and working together. And they're so preoccupied, like I said, with the hair, the nails. This girl looked at her a certain way. So it was a little difficult, but each time I would come back because I knew I had to.
right.
It was my obligation. I couldn't give up on them.
Absolutely.
As they may have given up on themselves. And yes, I do see a parallel. But when I was a little girl, we weren't right in the middle of guns and knives and all that kinds of stuff. And
Right.
and we grew our food.
Exactly.
These people.
Right. So it's a different terrain.
Right.
Wow. Well, we got to have you back on the show. Okay. Now,
Thank you.
please tell the people where they can find you, your website, social media, and what you're doing next.
I'm on Facebook, of course, like everyone else, Beareather Reddy. And but my website is www.bigeyedblues.org. My plans is to have another festival in October 2018.
Okay.
And right now it's scheduled to be at Cumble Theater.
Nice. Nice. Well, we don't have an applause button yet.
What?
But that's right.
Thank you. It's a
Thank you
pleasure.
very
Thank
much.
you so much for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. And whatever you need, if we can do it, we're there.
Thank you. I
You're very
appreciate
welcome.
it.